in The Observer. We are, of course, looking ahead to the World Cup this summer. Or, Mark Ogden, are we looking forward to a World Cup this summer? Paul Hayward in The Observer says a World Cup boycott has to be a live threat all the way up to next June. The creeping assertion that the US, with its high visa walls, militarised immigration policing and adventurism abroad, is no place for a football team or its fans to be. The recurring point is that a World Cup boycott would be small beer compared with the craziness all around, which is not to say it should not happen. It's too soon to know what the world would look like in June. Are we talking about a real credible threat here that a boycott could happen?
I don't think so right now. I think, going back to 2018 in Russia and 2022 in Qatar, there were a lot of issues ahead of both tournaments which led to talk of a boycott. Certainly with Russia and the Skripal poisoning, that was ahead of the tournament, and that led to Kosovo being boycotted. But the US, it's going to take a lot of courageous football associations to do this, because I don't think the government will impose a boycott on any of the nations involved. So will any of the FAs say we're not going? I know that the question was put to somebody in the Danish FA last week, because they're in the playoffs, and obviously if Denmark qualify, there's a lot of tension between the US and Denmark right now over Greenland. But a boycott of the World Cup, I think one of the German vice presidents, the DFB vice presidents, come out and said it should be considered. And that is a strong moment if a member of the German FA is saying that. But I think we have to kind of counter that in the sense that this guy is the chairman of St. Pauli, who are, traditionally a very left-wing club, so that is the view that they would hold. But I think a boycott of a World Cup, I just think it's unlikely, because this isn't a sporting question, it's a political question. And I don't think any government right now, all the governments around the world right now are trying to kind of make sure they don't upset Donald Trump, boycotting his World Cup, which is his World Cup. He has the trophy in the Oval Office more often than not. I just don't see anybody having the courage or the courage of the conviction to do it.
I agree with Mark. I think also it's made complicated by the fact that it's not just the USA's World Cup. It's also Mexico and Canada's World Cup. So if you're going to boycott, do you boycott just the US games and play in Mexico? Or do you play in Canada? It's a complicated, difficult issue. I think more likely is that fans will almost vote with their feet to a degree, and the fans simply won't go in the numbers that FIFA and the USA and Mexico and Canada would expect. And I think that was actually already a live issue before the recent sort of political issues with Greenland and the European NATO issue with Trump, because the ticket prices are so expensive, getting there so hard with travel. I think the stadiums are so big. I think it's quite possible that a lot of people, certainly, for example, there's a piece in the Telegraph by Jeremy Wilson, my colleague, writing about how in Denmark, you mentioned Denmark, the USA is obviously not very popular right now, and a lot of fans might just not want to go. It just might just not go, and that doesn't affect the matches taking place, but it affects the spectacle and the competition. And there are other various issues going on. Also, Jeremy, in that piece, he mentions that an immigration policy in America that is expected to exclude fans from travelling from 4 of the qualified countries. So if that's the case, fans from Senegal, for example, literally can't go. They're excluded from going. The team can go, the team get exemptions, but the fans can't go. So it's not a biggest leap to go from that issue and to see people not turning up, or the tournament not being what the USA and FIFA and Mexico and Canada are hoping it will be.
Carl, just picking up on what the guys have said there, and just quoting from Jeremy Wilson's piece, even though the boycott seems unthinkable, he says, with Trump threatening to annex part of Denmark, what Sam alluded to there, what better card do they realistically have? A World Cup without Denmark, who still face 2 potential playoff rounds, is one thing. But just imagine if the NATO alliance became sufficiently outraged by a turn of events. In a stroke, the winners of 12 of the 22 World Cups, Spain, France, Germany, Italy and England, would be sidelined, enough to destroy the tournament. It's going to need everybody to come together and say, we've got to do this together, or not at all.
Yes, it's going to require a level of collective collaboration that we've not previously seen in world football for some time. It's also going to take a number of invested parties to go, I'm willing to take the financial hit. Infantino has spent the last however long talking about how this is going to be the most successful World Cup ever, how it's going to generate so much money, it's going to generate the biggest crowds, etc., etc., etc. I think the invention of the FIFA Peace Prize was another attempt to get closer to Donald Trump, and again, big up the image of FIFA as this grand unifying force of the world. I believe, what was it he said, football was the unifying force of human beings at the World Cup draw, which there are many things Infantino says and does that brings me great frustration and confusion. This is a World Cup during particularly difficult, politically fraught times where even if you are a citizen of a nation that will be allowed in, as far as we know, there's no guarantee of your safety. The horrific events that are currently going on in Minnesota suggest that this is an unsafe World Cup tournament. And I think we should be having really serious conversations about how it affects people on a micro level.
Forgive my cynicism, but a lot of countries, especially in the West, were very upset, rightly, and unhappy with how the Qatar World Cup had been built and the human rights issues there. In the end, what happened? Nothing. So I suspect that will be the case again.
I think an issue as well is that Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, is basically a stooge of Donald Trump. He will not do anything that will upset Donald Trump. He will make sure that he will bend over backwards to appease Donald Trump, or anything that is controversial. Infantino is not going to stand up for football. So that is an issue that has to be addressed, and that's a bigger issue going down the line, that the Infantino presence in FIFA, whether the European nations can find a way to displace him, that might help the football side of it. But in terms of a boycott, I just don't think anyone's going to do that.
Effectively, Trump and Infantino are now the same thing, aren't they? Effectively. FIFA and the USA government are just one.
Tricky, but I can see the argument.
Thanks, Carl.
Pressing in real time.
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. I'm sure we haven't heard the last of this in the coming weeks and months. Right.